I would like to start today a little bit differently. I think in the last week, I think in the past week, we've seen quite a few statements by government saying that no one needs to worry. Specifically, Minister Sisulu, who made it very clear that there's no need for any community to feel any sort of fear. Now, something that caught my eye this morning in an article was a spokesperson from Durko that said there's no reason for any government anywhere in the world to suspect that any South Africans are in danger. And I just cannot let that statement go by unseen. Now, how I'm going to respond is there's a specific farm attack victim called Mariandra Yenes. Her husband was shot dead in front of her and her little girl about a year ago. And she is now raising 4 children alone, and she gave birth to their son only 5 days after her husband was murdered. Now I'm going to read a letter that she wrote. I asked her to say something. She actually she sent out a WhatsApp message, but then I asked her, write us a letter in response to what Minister Sisulu is saying, and I would like to read that to you. So the first question is, really, South Africa? No reason to suspect that any South African is in any danger. No threats exist. Is it in fact easier to sweep the statistics under a rug, pretending that these crimes do not exist? Will it make the murders stop? Will it improve the lives of those left behind to pick up the pieces? The stories told and published are true. Unfortunately, these are not folk tales. It really happened to real people really living in South Africa. And it keeps on happening. The statistics can't lie. Each of these stories share some hope. If you read them correctly, stories of South Africans still standing, getting up day after day and contributing to society, trying to live normally in abnormal circumstances. Life does not owe anyone a single thing. But please do not tell these people not to have fear, not to be uncertain of their future, or not to fear for their safety. Not to feel threatened by public announcements by people like, for example, Cyril Ramaphosa, Minister Sisulu, specifically Julius Malema, that create threats, or not only state threats, but also make use of hate speech. Keep in mind that these people know what it feels like to plead and beg for their lives in a violent situation. Please take anything, take everything. Please just don't harm us. Now, to give you an idea, just to stop there, when the evening that Mariandra and her husband and their children were attacked on a farm, the attackers were debating about whether they should shoot her husband or not. And the one attacker simply said to the other, "Oh, just shoot him, brother." And there was complete calm from their side, simply to shoot. And if that is just us not having a problem, or no one being put in any form of danger in rural areas, we are really lying to ourselves. In some cases, like ours, without mercy and pointless, they have encountered what most South Africans fear most. We are so desensitized to crime reports. It has become normal, and that is not normal. She says, and then she quotes Minister Sisulu, she says, no reason to fear. I think all South Africans live in some form of fear across all races. South Africa is wounded, crippled by crime. Nothing to fear, no such threat exists. Come tell that to my little children. Tell that to the survivors of these crimes who has to unfairly be grateful that they have survived, that it could have been worse, while left to drag with them the weight of scars of their most awful violence, loss, and infringement of their own basic right to safety for the rest of their lives. Tell that to every man who has to be safe and vigilant, a familiar term used amongst our communities in their homes night after night, waiting for the worst, prepared to fight for their families' lives, literally. To the wives who pray to God that it won't ever happen, because it does. Families are ripped apart, children left fatherless and traumatized, lives taken, blood spilled, lives destroyed, but there is no reason to fear, Minister Sisulu. Sure, nothing is ever hopeless. I believe in hope, in the goodness of people, in peace and light, but how can a solution be found if the mere existence of the problem is denied? And with that, I would like to state to you, just since the 1st of January in 2018, in this country, we have already had 109 farm attacks. Now consider that a conservative figure because there's no way that we can know of every single one, and we have to go through a verification process. So I would in fact say that it's even more. The murders on farms that we can confirm is 15 murders since the 1st of January. That means that in less than 100 days of this year, we have already had more than 100 attacks on the farming community in this country. I speak of Atti Jooste and Jan Kemptor. He was murdered on the 6th of January. He was stabbed to death. In fact, he was hacked to death. I speak of Rihanna Louw de Tooy in Sutherland, who was also killed. She was beaten to death with a large rock that was dropped on her head. Then I speak of Bongani Kenneth, who was also stabbed to death. He was beaten to bits and also shot. I speak of Koos Bernardi Bronkhorstspruit. 7 armed suspects with military precision shot him and killed him, and also shot his son through the head. He was lucky to survive. I speak of Dries Steenkamp in Leidenburg, in Mpumalanga. He fired back at the attackers, but he later on died from the injuries that he had from the attack. Athol Harvey in Berkeley West, also killed in a farm attack. Percy Cipriani, also killed in an attack. He was hacked to death with a machete. I speak of Liesel Nel in Nelspruit. The victim is assumed to have been strangled. No one really knows what happened. In fact, she was just looking after someone's house in a rural area. She had nothing to do with the daily activities there. She was literally just visiting, and she was also killed. I speak of Hans Meyer, who was killed in Charlesville. They even shot his dogs. I speak of Hanni van der Vyver in Chrissesmeer. They found her with bruises on her throat, leading to the assumption that she was strangled to death. Magriet Job, Groblersdal, also with a head wound. Hannes Christie, Kulini, also shot. Dirk Steenkamp, Vredefort. Victim was shot some distance from his farmhouse. The shooting was described as an execution. Martin Lowe, the newest one, Tilbach. He found an attacker inside the house whilst he was sleeping, and he was stabbed to death. Now, if I look at these figures and I look at these stories, it certainly does not seem to me that we don't have a problem. If you look at the majority of these cases, and for sensitivity purposes, I'm not going to go through each detail. If we go look at the majority of the cases throughout this year, especially where people were killed and obviously injured, there are a whole amount of them that involved serious amounts of violence. Now, once again, and I think Ernst will emphasize that, we don't see these attacks as being a normal crime. I have a list here in front of me about people who were suffocated with plastic bags. They were beaten, they were hacked, they were raped, they were burnt with blowtorches or electric irons. Even end of last year, Nikki Simpson, who was drilled through her hands and her feet with an electric drill. These aren't normal cases of robbery. And it is in fact so that a minority group is facing a serious issue with the violence that's being committed against them currently in South Africa. I think just to end off from my side is to say that if we are denying this problem, and I was quoted on saying it last week, I think Durko, and specifically Minister Sisulu, is completely out of her depth when it comes to rural issues in this country. And if we hear the statements being made in certain areas, just last week, once again, land reform, in the same area in Olivenhout-Bosch where land was being taken, yet another family was attacked on their farm. Now, I can't prove if they are connected to each other completely, but what I can say is that it seems that every single time certain statements are made or certain campaigns are run by specific groups or organizations, we once again see an increase in violence there.